Freaking out, man.
You can't handle the truth. You can't handle the truth.
What do all men in power want? More power.
And now, broadcasting live on GMN from an undisclosed location in the Arizona desert. Italian by birth, American by choice. Songwriter, poet, freedom activist, luca-zanna with Love, Guns, and Freedom.
All systems go.
Don't tread on us.
Hi everybody, this is luca-zanna. You're listening to Love, Guns, and Freedom on K-Talks 1340 AM and on Guerrilla Media Network. Don't forget also you can listen to the show directly through my website, lovegunsfreedom.com. Today is Sunday, at the Sunday Night Show. As you know, my purpose, the reason why I'm here, it is not to entertain or to give you some exciting news or some sort of a fun time. No, you can do better somewhere else. For me, it's like a mission. Since the moment that I became an American, I understood what's pretty much, or at least I started to understand, that America and the rest of the world, it's under attack, and freedom is at stake. My process of learning, during my process of learning, or my learning process, I met, or at least I went through as my guides or my people that inspired me, and I learned from them, several individuals. And they're not really many, but one of these, I'm such an honor to have it with me today, because I've been reading his books and listening to him on several shows, and it's been a process, a big part of the process of me learning and keep learning, because it never ends, this process. And the learning we are talking about is trying to understand exactly what's going on, really going on in America, and what's really going on in the world, and exactly what means this global government or this new world order, and what means exactly also for practical facts, what means how it's going to change and destroy our lives and our freedoms. Today is my honor to have this man that I really repute one of the pillars of, if we look in the future, we look at, to American history, people that were trying to warn us pretty much what's going on right now. I think Jim Marrs is one of the few people really that is being part of this process of awakening. Jim, are you there?
Yes, I am, Luca. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Pleasure. This is my first interview with you, and I hope it's not the last. And I'm so excited because I really have been following you for many years, at least since I became an American. I started to wake up around 2003. I became an American in 2005, naturalized American. And among the different sources that I was studying, you were one of the first. And I'm very pleased today to be with you. And
well, thank you. It's my pleasure and honor to be with you. But I got to tell you that I think it's kind of shameful that you, as a new American citizen, probably know more and understand more about this country than so many people who were born here.
I start to realize that this is something that it's like almost part. First of all, there are two components, in my opinion. Every one of us is different. We are born from different DNA, and sometimes even if you were born in a country like Italy or Europe, where really we never had rights, we are pretty much subjects to the state or to the kings, like we used to be. You have just privileges. Still, some of us doesn't really fit into the situation. Even I grew up in a regular environment, boarding school, military schools. I always was some sort of, rebel in that area. I never really liked the process of being a slave, okay? But regardless, I also believe it's up to us now, there is enough information out there. It's almost like we've been separated in two groups. People who wants to face the truth and people that were afraid to face the truth at this point. And but we're here. And my goal with this show, we have full hour together, is to try to, first of all, share as much as information as possible on the big picture of what's really going on to America in this moment, and look at it is not just a political problem, it is not just a simple maybe left against right or funny Republicans against funny Democrats. It's something way bigger that unfortunately is also influencing and changing the whole world. Let's start first a little bit about you, please. Briefly, you have a beautiful, incredible curriculum. Give us to our listeners a little bit about your background.
Okay, well, basically, I'm just an old Texas newspaper reporter. I do have a degree in journalism from the university. I've worked for several newspapers, even tried owning a couple, and that's basically my background. But as such, and I have had a wide and varied background. I started off as a police reporter covering fire and police, and then courts, and then city and state government. And then even international stories. I was sent to the Middle East. I've been to Europe and to Mexico, Canada. I've been traveled pretty well. I even made a trip to Tibet back in the 80s.
Wow.
So I'm pretty well traveled. And Luca, I consider myself the last of a dying breed, which is a generalist. I know a lot about a lot of things, but I'm not. I don't claim to be an absolute expert in much of anything, except maybe possibly the Kennedy assassination, since that happened right here in my backyard. And in fact, I met Jack Ruby even before the assassination, so I was very much aware of who was running Dallas and how everything happened. So that gave me a little bit of a leg up on the assassination. But everything else has been through interviews and research and reading and like that. So, but I think that that's something we're lacking in today's society. We've become a very highly specialized society. Doctors know medical practice, lawyers know the law, bankers know banking, but they don't. What I found is that very rarely do they know anything much outside of their particular professional field. And I think that this is kind of a sad fact of life, because I think we need people who have a broad overview and can put things together and can link issues and personalities to try to get, as you say, find the big picture of what's actually going on.
Exactly. And this is, for me, I agree completely with you, because we've been almost trained just to be part of the machine, of that big, huge machine. And our job, like, when you go into the factories, they train you to just do the little part of the job, and then you forget about the rest. And so,
that's right.
Divide and conquer, that's what used to say Julius Caesar. Pretty much we are divided and secluded in our little areas, and we never look exactly what's going on at the final big picture, unless or until it will be too late. So,
the unfortunate fact of that situation is that too often people are doing things because they're told to, they're ordered to, they're expected to, and they don't really realize the significance of the outcome. And they may be doing something, I don't know, as a bad example. Let's say you're making some little component of a machine, and you think this is a job, and I'm looking forward to my retirement, and this is all good and well, but you don't realize that this machine that you're putting together is being used to kill people all over the world,
Exactly. And just to finish up a little bit about your background, something that I would like to mention. First of all, you are a New York Times best-selling author. You have at least 4 books that has been New York Times best-selling authors. Books. And also, let's not forget, you were a very important part as a consultant. I guess you were hired for the movie. There was Crossfire. I mean, you wrote a book about Jeff Kennedy assassination in 1989. Crossfire. Okay, but also
that was one of the books used as the basis for the Oliver Stone film JFK.
Exactly. So you were also you consulted Mr. Oliver Stone during his movie.
Yes.
Perfect. So this is something just to understand that we are talking about a grown-up man that is not just wearing a hat, or like people try to make fun of us just because, we're talking about things that they are not in the mainstream media, even they're becoming more and more. This is solid facts, they're solid science, and more important now, it's on the open. Now, I would like to start with a basic thing that probably many of my listeners are already aware, but I'm trying to reach the new people. What means really New World Order? Well, if you can sum it up in some sort of a short statement, what exactly means this New World Order or global governance?
Okay, well, to my mind, the New World Order is really nothing more than the old world order, just being renamed, and with some change of management. In the past, within our lifetimes, or at least within the lifetimes of our parents, in Europe, for example, the kings and queens and the royalty were running the show. And then after World War I, this began to break up. And then we got into these monolithic blocks like communism and the Nazism and all like that. But still in all, the same families and the same centers of finance were running the show. And so today, if you want to know what the New World Order actually is, it's an attempt by the wealthy elite of the world to create a one-world socialist type system. And the reason that they are pushing for socialism is because socialism, it can be sold on the one hand as a very good thing, and then on the other hand can be seen as a very bad thing. But the main point is that under any social program that pretends to take care of people from the cradle to the grave, it's to do it effectively, it requires central administration. You have to have a central authority to make sure that the program is equitable and works well for everybody. And these wealthy elite, this 1%, as the Occupy people talked about, once they realize that once you create this centralized authority, they have the money, the wealth, the power to seize control over the central authority, and therefore they will control the world. One of the age-old desires and ambitions of people that want to try to run the world. If you want to see the practical way in which this is happening, I would direct you to a British socialist named Eric Arthur Blair, who back in the 40s wrote a book under the pen name George Orwell. But Eric was very well connected to the British aristocracy, and I think he understood very well what the ultimate game plan is. And so in his book, 1984, we see that in his totalitarian future, the world has been divided into three basic economic blocks. In the book, it was Oceania, East Asiana, and Asiana. In today's world, in reality, we have the European Union and the soon-to-be North American Union, and then the future Asian Union.
Yes.
And this future Asian Union is not going to be that difficult to create because most of the Asian nations are pyramidal power, meaning that the power rests at the top with a handful of people or with one dictatorial leader. And then, so all you have to do is bring those people onto your board of directors or pay them off, and then you've got control over that. And so I think this is exactly what we're going to see transpiring. In fact, we see it today with the European Union expanding and people talking about a North American Union. There already exists a South American Union. And then what they do is they play these socialist blocs off against each other to maximize control and profit.
Yes, and if I can also say something, I realized also during my research that most of this elite, if you want to say, they're not just regular people. Think, you got like now millionaires. We're talking about trillionaires. People, most of them, they are central bankers, or at least people who really owns the banks, and they're all in the finance world. And it seems like it's been going for generations. It's not just happened in the last 100 years. Of course, I would like to remind to the listeners, they think that maybe New World Order is a world like conspiracy. All you have to go is to go to Google Bush father, okay, and put New World Order and Bush. How many times Mr. Bush, President Bush, pretty much advocated and mentioned for this New World Order. So it's all on the open. There have been books and everything's on the open. Right now, even Obama and Kissinger on the mainstream news. This is nothing but now just a reality. Now, what do you think about who is really behind? I mean, because I was going to read a book that I just ordered on Amazon, your newest book. It's Our Occulted History. And do the global elite conceal ancient aliens? One of my first theory was, when I started to understand this New World Order, especially thinking about if we've been visited in the past by some, higher civilization, and I really believe we've been. would be easier for them to control us through our own governments instead of just coming out, dressed like the man in green and start to shoot at us. If they want to control their resources, they can control us through our own governments because we are, after all, we're supposed to be under the rule of law. And it would be compliance from our side, and we'll be pretty much enslaved by our own laws. I start to believe that Agenda 21 and all these different plans that they have us to enslave us and to control our resources would make any difference is behind these global elites. They're just bankers, or maybe they're also some sort of some alien species. What do you think?
Well, first off, let me just point out that the entire wealth of the world has been estimated at about $990 trillion.
Wow.
Now, the Rothschild family banking dynasty reportedly owns about 500 trillion of that.
Wow.
And in North America, it's the Rockefeller family that's worth more than $100 trillion. Now, this is who we're talking about. This is what's at the top of the financial pyramid. And collectively, these families own or control virtually all of the world's major banks, multinational corporations, conglomerates, and oil companies. They also own massive real estate holdings such as castles, palaces, stately mansions, luxury hotels, racetracks, casinos, exotic holiday resorts, and along with large tracts of farmland and uncut forest. And this is what we're talking about. Now the question is, when you look at what they're doing and you look at the pollution and you look at the stuff that's going on, you have to ask yourself, are they even us? Because it's wild, but in my book, Our Occulted History, I think you will find that the evidence for non-human interaction on this planet goes all the way back into prehistory.
Wow.
And the evidence is just, I started to say compelling, but it's almost overwhelming. When you look, number one, all of the native primitive tribes on the world have the same story, which is in the distant past, their people they considered gods could fly through the air and would come and land and teach them agriculture and law and language. And so I think the evidence for extraterrestrial or certainly non-human intervention is very, very real. And then that brings us up till today. If non-humans were on this planet thousands of years ago, then it's an either-or situation. Either they all left at some point, leaving us alone, or some part of them are still interacting. And I think that the answer to that can be found in the historical record. If, as we are taught, human evolution, it was just a slow evolutionary climb from cavemen to hunter-gatherers to farmers to towns, villages, and then cities, and then city-states, and then nations, just this slow progression, then we could probably say, well, they must have all left. But if you look closely, as you are well aware, Luca, we find all the way through history the accounts of the flying dragons of the Chinese, the flying boats of the Egyptians, the flying shields of the Romans, all the way up to the flying saucers of today, the crop circles, the people who claim that they've been abducted, animal mutilations. So wait a minute, somebody's still here. And now that brings us up to the current day. Karen Hughes was a former senior counsel for the World Bank, and she has publicly stated that the group that is behind the effort to control the world she says they are not human beings.
Wow.
But she said they're very smart, but they're not very creative. They are mathematical. They have a much stronger force in past ages. They have elongated skulls, and they can produce offspring by mating with human women.
Wow.
But anyway, so that's a former, and then she's not alone. Paula Hilliard is a former Minister of National Defense in Canada, And he states that there have been different alien species visiting the Earth for thousands of years, and that some of them can pass as humans. You could pass one on the street, and unless you notice something a little bit odd, you just wouldn't give them a second look. Dr. Edgar Mitchell, the sixth man to walk on the moon, is on the public record as saying that we now have technology that we've gotten from aliens.
Wow.
All right? And then I would also point out that Christine Fitzgerald was the personal confidant of Princess Diana. Mm-hmm. And she's for 9 years. And she said that, of course, prior to her death, that Diana told her that the royal family of England is actually extraterrestrials who are reptilians.
Wow.
Said they're not human. She told this Christine. Now, who knows? I don't know. As far as I know, I've never met an alien, but you never can tell, especially if they look like us, can pass for us. But it makes a little bit more sense to think that because some of the activities that are going on today, the pandemics, the warfare, the increasing disparity between the haves and the have-nots, the fact that we have the technology on this planet today to feed, clothe, give basic medical care to every single human on this planet, and yet it's not happening. Even as we're having our talk today, there are literally millions of people starving to death all around the earth. Now, why is it that way? I don't want it that way. You don't want it that way. I doubt any of your listeners want it that way.
Yes.
But I'll tell you something. The reason that it is that way is because somewhere somebody wants it that way.
Yes.
If nobody wanted it that way, well, it wouldn't be that way, would it?
Exactly.
And so I think we have to seriously start asking these people who are trying to run the world, are they even us?
This is the main question I had a few years ago, like a flash for a moment. I said, wait a second. And I will continue now in the second part of the first hour to tell you also some more details. And there are so many things also in the mainstream media, also in the different type of entertainments that give us sometimes ideas, and I think they are just more than coincidences. You're listening to Love, Guns, and Freedom with luca-zanna and Jim Mars. Don't go away. This is just the first part of the first hour, ready for the second part. Stay there.
Have you ever met someone on an online dating site and thought, wow, this guy is perfect for me, or she is simply amazing, only to find out they were hiding a deep, dark secret? They plan to vote for Hillary. FreedomLovers.us was created for singles who want to exchange ideas and a love for freedom. People who are looking for solutions to create and defend freedom in the real world, and at the same time, getting that once-in-a-lifetime chance to find their true soulmate. Whether you are interested in meeting your soulmate, making new friends, networking, or hanging out with that like-minded liberty lover, visit FreedomLovers.us. It's the first free dating site and community. So patriots, don't waste your time with other dating sites. FreedomLovers.us is the place where like-minded singles really click.
He's a songwriter, a poet, a rifleman.
I'm not afraid.
And a constitutional activist.
I'm not afraid.
Italian by birth.
I'm not afraid.
American by choice. Gianluca Zanna.
I'm not afraid.
And his new CD, Love, Guns, and Freedom. 16 powerful songs on one CD from the heart of a patriot. For download or to order the CD, go to www.lovegunsfreedom.com. That's www.lovegunsfreedom.com. Lyrics for your mind, music for your heart.
Here we go. We are back. Second part of the first hour. This is luca-zanna, Love, Guns, and Freedom. Special guest, Jim Mars from Texas. We're talking about global elite, New World Order, and of course also his latest book that is called Our Occulted History, available on Amazon.com or everywhere you can find it. Oh, by the way, let's not forget also the Jim Mars website. Jim, are you there?
Yes.
What is your website, please? Go ahead.
Well, surprisingly enough, it's jimmars.com, and that's Jim, J-I-M, Mars with two R's, M-A-R-R-S.com.
Perfect. And I really invite you to, to discover. There's so much information, so much things that you really can verify. I've been reading all his books. This is the newest book, and it is not just reading entertainment. This is about learning something that I believe is one of the most important things we are living as a human beings in this moment of history. Now, we were talking about, who is really behind, and we have started theories. They're not even just theories. They are backed also by facts. If we were doing like some sort of investigative police report, we have enough evidence to press some charges here, in my opinion. And we were talking about a TV series like V during the 80s of this alien species landing on planet Earth, trying to look like they were friends. They look like humans. And then at the end of the day, you see that they were pretty much like big lizards. And they were trying to steal our water. And they were sucking it up. And they were controlling, of course, our politicians with some sort of a brainwashing machine, or even just controlling their minds. And then, of course, there were people missing, thousands or millions of people missing, because they were using them as food. I thought it was just a movie when I was in Italy watching it. It was just some sort of entertainment from Hollywood. And then I started to realize there is something that starts to look more and more real. Our politicians, we send them to Washington, they seem normal for a moment, and then they come back like they are other people, seriously. Our environment, it's pretty much used to control our resources. We don't even access anymore to photo or public land, Agenda 21, and all these things they're doing to us. We cannot even anymore build anything without begging for a permit. It seems like almost somebody's having a bigger plan. What is your opinion about this? I mean, maybe it's really something that we could be already being conquered, and we don't know it.
That's very true. Let me point you to a 2011 study by the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology. And they made a study of 43,000 multinational corporations. And they found that these 43,000 multinational corporations are all under the control of about 1,300 companies.
Wow.
With interlocking ownership, and these 1,300 companies are in turn controlled by only 147 interlocking firms, and then these are pretty much under the control of about 20 banks. Wow. And these banks, of course, have cross-ownership and cross-directorship. So I think that 2011 study proves that there is simply a handful of individuals who control the vast amount of all of the global revenues on this planet. So now that's fact.
Yeah, that's fact.
Now the question is, who are these people?
Exactly.
This study by the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology did not even go into the family, social, or other relationships of these owners and stockholders. And so when you consider that, for example, if I own a certain amount of stock in a company and my wife owns a similar stock in that company, and then say together we control maybe only 12% of the stock of that company, but if nobody else controls more than 12%, which then we control that company.
Exactly.
And we control it. And of course, my wife and I, we have a give and take relationship. I give, she takes, and so if that means I'm running that company, and yet if you look, so you'd only find my name for a small percentage of the ownership, and it doesn't look like I control that company, but it does, but I do. And that's the way it works. And this handful of people control probably 60 to 70% of the global revenues of this planet.
And of course, they control also the media, so they pretty much can create this surreal reality of.
Yes, you find that same concentration of ownership in the media today. See, I was concerned maybe about 12 years ago in that so many of the newspapers that I was familiar with were being bought up by these news conglomerates. Well, today it's down to 5. There are 5 companies that essentially control everything that we see and hear.
Wow.
And I'm not just talking about news. I'm talking about, the 5 companies, by the way, are Disney, Time Warner, Viacom, News Corporation, all right? And they control Six Flags parks, amusement parks, books, record companies, publishing houses, newspapers, satellite, cable, magazines, radio networks, and radio stations, TV stations, channels, even billboards. Now, think about that for a minute. 5 corporations with interlocking and interconnecting directorships and owners control everything you see and hear.
Wow, I completely understand that. And one thing I also try to, make me really think even more about what you're saying. They pretty much, who's really started all this, when you have the power to create money out of thin air, okay? The central bankers, like the Federal Reserve, that you know very well that is federal as the Federal Express. These people, that the shareholders, they pretty much control the government through issuing currency. I remember that at the beginning of the century, the JP Morgan and all these families, the first thing they wanted to do, especially after before the creation of the Federal Reserve, because there was some sort of opposition to give away our sovereignty to issuing currency, they wanted to buy and decided to buy pretty much all the newspapers of the time. And now they pretty much have achieved that goal, and they have unlimited powers, because who can compete with an organization that pretty much is given as this special magic power given by the government to create money out of thin air, and they can buy everything, and they can control governments. I mean, now, almost all the world, tell me if I'm wrong, almost every nation in the world, unless it's been pretty much now ready to be attacked by NATO or other countries, they all have a private central bank. Is it true?
Yes, that's true, including the United States. In fact, it's almost humorous. Through most of my life, you never heard the Federal Reserve called a central bank, because that was part of the argument, is that all the way through, going back to the time of the American Revolution, one of the biggest conflicts was whether or not we wanted a central bank. And people who were all for individual freedom and were followers of Thomas Jefferson said, no, look what happened in Europe with the central banks, and they controlled the money, they controlled the kings and queens, they started and ended wars, they threw countries against each other for profit, and we don't want a central bank. And yet the colonists under Hamilton said, no, the rich people ought to be running things because they know how to handle money. So there were 2 or 3 attempts. The old Bank of the United States, the Bank of America, they actually tried a central bank for a while, and of course, in each instance, there was abuses and malfeasance, and they finally ended it. And so the central bank was finally ended in about 1830 with the election of Andrew Jackson as president, and he closed them down and called them a den of vipers. And we didn't have a central bank up until 1913, when they slipped in the Federal Reserve Act. As you pointed out, it's neither federal nor do they have any reserves. It's a collection of private banks, and the way it works is absolutely phenomenal. Congress agrees that we'll have to take on more debt. So then they turn to the Federal Reserve, this collection of private banks, and say, okay, issue so many hundreds of millions of dollars. So they use a few $100s of ink and paper and print up, say, $100 million. And then do they charge the government for the hundreds dollars that cost them for the paper? No, they charge them for the full $100,000 that we have to pay interest on.
Wow.
That's called retiring the national debt. And they ram that through on a Christmas Eve.
Yes.
And when nobody was paying attention. And we've been saddled with that particular thing ever since. Now, here's what's really interesting, and you're probably aware of this, Luca, but I think I should inform your listeners that in the history of the United States, there's only been 2 presidents who tried to bypass these international bankers that own the Federal Reserve System. First was Abraham Lincoln,
Yes.
who issued greenbacks, interest-free money, to fund the war between the states. And then in June of 1963, John F. Kennedy
Yes.
issued $4.2 billion in United States notes. This is silver-backed treasury notes that we didn't have to pay interest to the international bankers on. And, Luca, I don't think it was just sheer coincidence that both of those presidents were shot in the head in public.
No, and also President Jackson, was the last president really that before he died, said, killed the bank. And I think there was an attempt of assassination also on him, if I well remember, correct?
That's correct. And in fact, and he blamed it on the European banking system.
Exactly.
They were trying to get rid of him. But so all through my life, it was the Federal Reserve, okay? And then all of a sudden, I don't know, about 15 years ago or so, in the news, all of a sudden they just say, today the central bank announced new interest rates, and all of a sudden this whole issue that had been such a bone of contention ever since the American Revolution, all of a sudden we had a central bank and nobody even batted an eye. Just nobody thought anything about it.
And that's what really, sometimes I can go to sleep at night, seriously. I feel like I live in a surreal world. I mean, I learned this, honestly, when I came to America, because when I was in Italy, I knew something was wrong, but I have no idea that the Bank of Italy is another central bank controlled by central bankers. This enlightenment, maybe it was my destiny to come here and to finally have the chance to, people through like you, to wake up and to get the information down. Now, what I really feel like, this is like nothing different since the Middle Age, since the time of bondage and slavery. Since
Right.
Nothing
Exactly.
changed. Nothing changed.
Except the difference is that in the Middle Ages, when the king's troops came around and took half your crop and your oldest daughter, at least you knew where this pressure was coming from.
Exactly.
Today, they have us lulled into a sense of freedom and democracy, and yet they're still taking your money and taxes and taking your sons and daughters for the military. Nothing's the New World Order is just the old world order under new management and different terms.
Exactly, because people right now wouldn't put up anymore to be under the crown, of course, beside exceptions like in England or other parts. But the idea that they want to give you, they want to sell you that you are free and you can vote. We know it's a joke, especially with the new electronic machines. And the bottom line is, you got to pay your fair share. But the idea is like they created like a prison, a jail without bars, that we are pretty much worse than in prison. Because at least when you're in prison, they feed you. And if you are sick, they take care of you, okay?
That's right.
Instead, we are slaves, and we have to take care of ourselves.
We have to feed ourselves.
That's the point.
But because they control the media, every time you turn on TV, you see the cop shows and the news, and they're telling you all the bad news and the shootings and the riotings and the terrorism. Oh my God! And they've got everybody so terrified that we've almost imprisoned ourselves in our homes. Right?
Yes.
So they've got everybody pretty much under lock and key, except they don't have to do it. And like you said, they don't have to feed us and give us medical attention like they would if they put us in prison.
Exactly. This is like how a small group of people, we're talking about really maybe less than 1,000. I mean, the families, they're so small, they can control the rest of us. And there is a book you wrote. It's called The $1 Trillion Conspiracy. I suggest people to read it. It's a great information, and it talks also very much about what we're talking here. And this is not just for the sake of philosophy or trying to be educated and try to impress your friends at the next coffee time. This is about how, if we ever have a chance to be free again, we've been enslaved at least for 100 years in bondage. Think about it. When I woke up in 2004 exactly, learning about this monster they call the Federal Reserve, they pretty much control our government, and it's like a monkey on the back of our back, that we know any law really, but just because of fear and because they got the biggest gun, they can pretty much, every time we go reach for a banana, like slaves, they get off of that banana, and they pretty much, that's what they're doing to us. We are in slavery. And we have to pay them. This money, according to Reagan, it was a Reagan investigation, it was by the Congress, all the income tax, all it does, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jim, all it does, it goes to pay part of the debt. The debt, and
right.
that's all
yes,
it does.
They call it retiring the national debt, but what they mean is paying interest on the money we've borrowed.
Exactly,
and,
the interest.
It's a ballooned up thing. We'll never get it paid off.
Exactly.
Every year, probably half the income of the United States goes to pay for the interest on the money that we've borrowed. And we'll never pay off the principal.
Exactly.
Because we're scrambling just pay the interest.
We used to do this for free. I mean, we used to do this so we could have at least printed our own money without being slaves of some bankers out there. So this is...
If you think you're not a slave, then think about this. Can you just quit your job and go somewhere else? Go do something else? No, because you got bills you got to meet every month. Okay, let's say you get up enough money and you pay off all your bills. But you've got a house, and let's say you pay off your house. Then are you free? No, because now you have to pay taxes.
Property taxes.
Year, and if you don't, they can come take your house.
Yes.
So you're not free, you're just a wage slave.
James, I really believe, of course, I could be probably just, I don't know even 1/10 of what you know, but I'm trying to learn and trying to see as much as I can. And you know more than I do. I would like to get your brain, your experience, just to see now all the different elements that we are facing the last few weeks, a few months, with this new administration that is not new anymore, of course, and the Ebola and all the different wars that becoming pretty much more and more evidence. What do you think?
Let's look at Ebola,
What do you think is going to happen to us the next few months?
Well, I tell you what, they are going to be pushing this, and they're going to try to get everybody in panic mode because of this Ebola. They tried to do this back about 2008 with the swine flu, and if you remember that, they had everybody rushing down, paying big bucks to get the swine flu inoculation, and then a lot of people got it anyway, and then it turned out to be no big deal. It was just some more flu. And now this one, I don't know. They keep telling us how bad this is and how bad it's going to be. And the problem is the government is like the story of a little boy who cried wolf. Surely you remember that children's story.
Yes.
I'm sure they probably have it in Italy too, right?
Yes, we do, yes.
Yeah, where the little boy kept calling wolf because he was lonely and wanted people to come out, and they came out. And then finally when the wolf showed up, he called wolf and nobody came to help him. Well, I think that we may have a situation like that coming up because the government has cried wolf so often that when we finally do get a pandemic, it may really turn bad before we figure out that it's real.
I believe, my opinion, this is different. This is something that, they keep us always on the alert, and then finally, we say, okay, they're just another of their overreaction. I believe this is different. First of all, Ebola is not just some swine flu. Second of all, it's being created in a lab, as we know. And and the more important thing, there is now the evidence that I don't call it negligence or stupidity, but it's complete criminality to let all the protocols that we had before as a nation, the last maybe 100 years, whenever there was some sort of emergency like that with some diseases that could be contagious, we had protocols that we were following. There were embargoes. There were area of quarantine that were outside the U.S. land or U.S. soil.
Right.
Everything's being voided. Everything now, we are treating this like it was a flu. This is something that I believe, and I start to connect also some other elements. The economic situation that pretty much is a show, is just a joke. I mean, all these numbers, the stock market is just inflated. And the factor now that gold is being manipulated and there being a big buyout of big corporations buying golds, hoarding gold. These new wars, Obama is falling down. Even the zombies, they're waking up a little bit. I really believe, and also the latest thing made me think a little bit about it. I'm sure you're familiar with the Georgia's Guidestones.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you know about this 2014?
Well, that's the key thing. I think what you're getting to, and this is the thing that's really scary, is that this ruling elite, this 1%, these self-styled globalists, they make no secret of the fact that they want to reduce the human population. And not only on the Georgia Guidestones, the very first admonition is keep the world's population to 500 millions. Okay? Now, the current world population is like 7.5 billion people.
Wow.
So if we are to keep the world's population to 500 million, what's supposed to happen to the other 7 billion people? And more importantly, if we're going to practice birth control, or if we're going to have retroactive birth control, who's going to decide who can live and who dies?
Exactly.
But see, they keep us. Most people are too content to just sit and watch TV and laugh at the sitcoms and watch the cop shows and the soap operas, and they don't stop to think that, wait a minute, there are people up there with immense power and money who want us dead.
Exactly. And also that's why they are so obsessed at global level, and of course now even in America the last at least 30, 40 years, for complete gun confiscation. There was just a leaked DOJ memo that I will talk during the second hour that says pretty much outlaw and confiscate all guns. And this is a fresh one out of this son of a gun of, what is his name? The one that he just left. I tried to forget his name, Attorney General.
Holder.
Holder, yes. And this is an official document.
Fast and Furious Holder.
Yes, January 2013, pretty much their goal is to confiscate and outlaw all guns. Wow.
Well, and all you have to do is go back and look at the history of the 20th century, and whether you want to look at Stalin or Hitler or Pol Pot or any of those dictators, any of those authoritarian regimes, one of their first steps is always to take guns away from the population.
Exactly, and now it starts to make sense.
They even now are trying. I think they even propagate some of these instances so they can say, "Oh, this is terrible. We have to take up guns." But let me tell you something, Luca. I grew up in Texas, and we had guns. I took guns to school. I knew people that had guns. They had them in the rack of the pickup truck. We all had guns. Nobody shot anybody. All right, there wasn't any school shootings. There wasn't any teen suicides. So it's got to be something other than the guns.
Yeah,
and I can tell you what it is. It's the psychotropic drugs.
Exactly.
Every school shooter, every one of these mass public shootings, okay, like the guy up in Colorado, you name it, and if you look closely, peel back the official cover-ups, you will find that every single one of them was on psychotropic drugs or just coming off of them.
Yes.
This is why there's been so many suicides and so many shootings from veterans, because in the U.S. military, they've been drugging those guys for years now. And they go over there and they get on those drugs, and then when they try to get off, even the drug companies themselves, when they list the contraindications, they point out that it gives you homicidal and suicidal tendencies.
Yes.
That's where the problem is, but you're never going to hear that because two reasons. Number one, drugs are one of the nation's leading advertisers. You turn on the TV, when the commercials come on, if they're not selling you a truck or a car, they're selling you a drug. So they're not going to say anything against the hand that feeds them. And the second thing is because there is an agenda at the very top of this ruling elite to try to disarm the population, because that's something they really fear. If the general population ever figures out what they're truly doing to them and who's behind it, and if they're armed, then they know that their time.
You're listening to Love, Guns, and Freedom with Luca-Zanna on Guerrilla Media Network. Hi everybody, this is Luca-Zanna. You're listening to Love, Guns, and Freedom on K-Talks 1340 AM and on Guerrilla Media Network. This is hour number 2, second hour. Normally we talk strictly about guns, tactics, different type of also thinking about the Second Amendment. This is not just an abstract concept. We like to make it as real as possible also on the radio. Now, today it's a different little bit of exception. I have a man that I believe he has a lot of good things he can share about the Second Amendment, because he also is a gubernatorial candidate for Arizona. And I met this man a few years ago when I remember he was running for the governor office, and I was very intrigued because I didn't know much about the Libertarian Party, but I realized that day that listening to this man talking, we have the same beliefs, and the beliefs is about freedom, and more important, who owns your body, and their individual responsibilities. And when it comes down to the Second Amendment, I believe there is probably no better party than the Libertarian Party. But I'm not advocating for any party. I'm just trying to support the man because I really believe has a lot of integrity and a lot of principles that our founding fathers shared. Ladies and gentlemen, I have here with me the honor and the pleasure to have Barry-hess. Barry, are you there?
I'm here, and I appreciate being here, Luca.
Thank you. I don't know if you remember, we met together when you came to Kingman. I remember you drove all the way from Phoenix because you were running, I think it was like 4 years ago. Is that correct?
I think so.
Yes.
It might have been 8 years ago.
Maybe 8 years ago. Oh, my gosh. Anyway, when did you run last time? Because this is not the first, it's not your first try for the governor office. Did you try it also last 4 years ago?
Yes, I did. I've actually been the nominee for the Libertarian Party, and this is my fourth election that they've given me that honor.
Wow. Wow. I remember when you came to Kingman, and you were you started with something that I was very, shocked in a positive way. You started to share, first of all, the Pledge of Allegiance that I started to learn after I met you, and I started to, trace the journey, try to investigate exactly who created this Pledge of Allegiance. What really means that? And I was pretty much shocked when I found out that there was this socialist individual that wasn't exactly what represented the ideals of our founding fathers, pretty much wrote this piece of indoctrination, which I believe it is. And one of the things I learned, I really was very pleased, the way that you pretty much rewrote in some way, and you reinterpreted according to the values of our founding fathers, the Pledge of Allegiance.
I fixed it.
Can you please tell us to us? And then we can talk a little bit about everything else. But can you please just try to remember how it sounds? Because it was so good. I was always trying to write it down. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, it's fairly simple. I pledge my allegiance through this flag to these states united as America, and to its republics for which it stands as one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are a couple of parts really interest me a lot. First of all, these states, now they call us, or they want to make us believe that we're supposed to be the United States. But as you know very well, better than me, I'm an immigrant, of course, I'm learning these things probably like as my second new life, and I'm trying to learn as much as I can. But the point is, we were these states. I mean, they were individual independent states they created the federal government.
Exactly.
And that's what they want us to try to forget, And another thing also I never really like about the Pledge of Allegiance, I know many people may fringe. So I'm sorry, guys. I really believe we've been programmed, because when you start to find out who wrote this Pledge of Allegiance, and the fact that, when they say indivisible, I have a little problem with that, because I believe America, it's America, it's great because it's united, but it's united because of free will, not coercion. And that was part of the agreement, correct? I mean, when
that is absolutely correct.
And, I don't want to start to sound even more, people devastating their, their type of beliefs, but guess what? In my opinion, Lincoln wasn't exactly that great guy, because he pretty much, for the first time, through force and coercion, he destroyed the true values of these United States, united spontaneously with a contract, always able and had pretty much the right to succeed in case they weren't finding the right solutions for them. And he put arrest that through violence. That's pretty much what I learned in my humble experience. What do you think about that?
You are absolutely right. Luca, what many people don't understand is that a state it's a political jurisdiction, but it's an individual nation. Well, it's not necessarily a nation, but it is a country, like the state of Israel. Mm-hmm. It is a sovereign nation unto itself, and as are each and every one of our 50 states. Mm-hmm. Here in America, the people have been kind of conned into thinking the states were a subdivision of something bigger. Mm-hmm. But what they don't realize is there's no such thing as a federal government.
Exactly.
It doesn't exist. It is a concept. Now, there are a bunch of buildings and stuff, but yeah, that's true. But there is no government. It is completely conceptual. So it is as powerful as we conceive it to be.
Exactly.
And that's what many people don't understand, that concept. That, you know, when they say the government said today something, I want to see its lips move. Wouldn't that be fun? Let's see exactly where that government talks from. And that's what I think hinders a lot of people when they say you can't change it. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, we built it. We can change it.
Exactly.
And we can tear it down if we want to.
Exactly.
And that's what I think is really amazing, is because you're right, you know, libertarianism is a philosophy. Now, it's also, unfortunately, in 1973, a group of people got together and formed a political party, and they named it the Libertarian Party. Whereas they are two separate things necessarily. And if you have an interest in the history of it, the philosophical side of libertarianism is from one place only. And that comes, it comes from a lot of contributing factors, but the place where here on this continent it was first ensconced in writing was in the Declaration of Independence. That is the heart and soul of libertarianism, because it explains why we have a government. And we have a government for just the sole purpose of protecting the rights and property of every one of the citizens that fall within the umbrella of its jurisdiction.
Exactly. And just to come back 1 second, because I would like, the purpose of this show, I said many times, it is pretty much 100% to try to share information and try to educate. And I'm not a teacher, I'm just a learner myself, and I learn as is a process, like a journey for myself. And when people say, oh my gosh, Luca, you don't like the Pledge of Allegiance. Now, first of all, I never pledge an allegiance to the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge an allegiance to America, its ideals, its constitution, and my brain is always here to try to learn. Now, maybe this generation didn't understand it or didn't know it, and so the generation before. But when you find out and you Google a little bit the name of this individual that they created the Pledge of Allegiance, and it's something that people should understand. And I'll give you the name right now. Its name is, just to let you know 1 second, because somebody, of course, try always to come at the wrong moment. Anyway, it was a socialist preacher, okay, and Francis Bellamy. Bellamy. Do a little research and learn a little bit about him. And then you start to read exactly what every word means. And I think it's very close to what happened not that long after in Nazi Germany. Because when you start to put a state, you pledge allegiance to the state, not to the truth or to the principle of liberty, we start to have a little bit of a problem here. But anyway, regardless.
That's why I say I pledge allegiance through this flag.
Exactly.
I mean, the flag is just a piece of cloth. It's a symbol. And that's what it should be. I mean, any healthy American would be thinking that terms. And yeah, of course, we revere what we brought together, as you said, voluntarily, is a voluntary confederation of nations for the centralization simply of a few functions that were to be taken care of and enumerated in the Constitution. And the Constitution was supposed to reflect the ideals that were ensconced in that Declaration of Independence. And for the most part, it does. But unfortunately, because the Constitution was more or less written by libertarians of varying stripes, of course. The problem that the real libertarians had was that 5/8 of a man thing. I mean, after all, you can't say everybody's equal, but except for these people over here. And that's essentially what it did. And because of those influences, the minor influences that were not libertarian in the Constitutional Convention, that's why the libertarians stood up and took a very hard stand and wrote and demanded they be incorporated as the Bill of Rights, 10 separate enumerations of rights that we already had. It was just saying our Constitution recognizes that each individual human being inherits these rights as a matter of creation.
Exactly.
And so the Constitution is just the way of saying, yeah, we see those rights over there and we respect them. But it has nothing to do with the awarding of any rights.
I like the word that you use, enumerating, because the Bill of Rights doesn't give us anything. It just enumerates. And remember,
that's all it does.
It reminds the government that we have this right, no matter what.
And you know what I think are the most powerful words in the whole document is the preamble to the Bill of Rights. Not the preamble to the Constitution,
yes,
but the preamble to the Bill of Rights. Because that tells you just exactly what they were thinking at the time. And they were saying, we don't trust you, so we want to be really clear that things like all of these enumerated rights that we get, that we want to recognize that they're all here, but it also made sure that everyone knew that there were other rights that were not enumerated but are just as real and just as inviolable. And I think I like to say that when they listed the rights out, the 10 that they felt were most important, which is the Bill of Rights, that they placed the Second Amendment was purposely placed as backup in case the First Amendment didn't get the job done. In other words, if your government didn't behave and you couldn't yell at them and make them mind or stay within the construct of authority they were granted, then you might resort to a little bit more forceful means as a matter of the citizenry.
Exactly. And that's what exactly is the difference between America and probably any other countries in the world. That's, I've been studying a little bit history from different parts of the world, countries, that there is none. There is not a Bill of Rights, there is not a constitution that pretty much says what we say here. Now, what our founding fathers said. The situation.
You know what's remarkable that I found out that I had some learning to do was one of my course of studies was what was called the Soviet Union. If you remember them, the evil empire.
Yes.
And if you ever read their constitution, they had a constitution too that incorporated all of course, Yugoslavia and Czechoslovakia and all the others, the Slavic nations that they had just forcibly brought into it. But they did have a constitution, and ironically, their constitution almost mimicked ours. Now, they didn't have the right to bear arms at all.
Of course.
But on the other rights, they were pretty much just like ours, and the huge difference, and the major difference, was that those rights were awarded by the central governing party,
yes.
by Russia.
So it's a privilege, not a right, but they call it
exactly.
a right. Yes. And I would like to remind every listener right now, you're listening to Love, Guns, and Freedom, and this is me, Luca, of course, but more important, the guest, our guest, it's Barry-hess running for governor, for Arizona governor, and his website is hessforgovernor.com. One thing I wanted to talk, this is ours, we're supposed to be, normally we talk about different type of tactics or training on guns in general, Second Amendment. This is even more important today, I really believe, because we come down to a point that if we don't find the right man or the right woman, they pretty much start to reuse, because we lost, never really use it, the 10th Amendment. We're going to pretty much face the loss of all our rights as a citizen of the state of Arizona. I consider myself also the citizen of the state of Arizona, even, of course, they let us forget this type of concept. But I believe that the governor has a very important role, and especially if supported by an educated population, because the governor itself cannot do everything. But if we have educated population and with a good support of law enforcement and, of course, legislators understand, a governor, he has incredible powers to try to spare us the misery and the tyranny that we are going through right now as Americans. What would be, first of all, your solution to try to stop all this, talking about the Second Amendment, attempts from Congress to pretty much destroy the Second Amendment in every way they can? What would you do as a governor?
Well, it's one of the things I had to understand what my own objectives and my own goals were. And I finally I came to realize exactly why, I'm in on all this. And it really comes down to what I want my legacy as governor to be. What's left be? What do people think of me when I'm gone? Either by termed out or impeached or I died or something. Whatever the case, my legacy, I hope, will be far more about not about what I've done, but more about what I have undone. Because that's one of the big gripes is a lot of people say, oh, no, we just like my competitors in this race, and the Republicans and Democrats in particular, they're talking about, trying to hold on and maintain. And it's sort of like when the NRA sold out all of us. And I gave up my lifetime membership, and I said, to hell with you guys.
Me too.
When I heard the official statement saying something to the order of, no, we've just got to enforce the laws that we have now. We don't need any new ones. We just have to enforce the ones we have now. And in my head, I knew immediately and said, no. We've got to undo what has already been done, not enforce it. We've got to get rid of them because there is a simple phraseology in the Constitution and in its award of authority to government in regard to firearms that shall not be infringed is not something that there are degrees or shades of. It's not a little bit. It's not almost. It's not maybe. It's not if it makes common sense or everybody will feel safer. It is uninfringed.
Exactly.
Period.
Exactly. And I really believe that, especially since, the 1934 and then, of course, the 1968 National Firearm Acts, they all should be repealed because...
they're null and void on their face, simply because they fly in the face of the Constitution and its construct. But inasmuch as government, all these people working together in a bureaucracy, wants to tell you that is what your life is ruled by, I'm here to tell you they're lying to you. And then you will do one of two things. You'll either stand up for your rights or you won't. Or you'll let somebody else tell you what your rights are. And I'm a firm believer that sometimes the best way to stand up for something is to sit down.
I agree.
Just sit down. Just say no. In the words of the sage Nancy Reagan, just say no.
And Barry, I would like to share with you a little personal experience. I became an American exactly in 2005, and I was allowed to vote, of course. And of course, I mean, sometimes people without being Americans, they still vote. I see sometimes, but that's another story. And the moment, for me was some sort of a crossroad. Say, pretty much it seems like almost you're trapped. You must go or into the cage of the lions or into the cage of the coyotes. I mean, one of the other one. So they were between a bloc Republican Party and Democrats Party. And, at the time, 2005 is a process, as I said, trying to learn. And on paper, the things I was close to, at least ideally, was the Republican Party. Then you start to learn and you realize that there is no really difference. It is just one is corporate welfare, and the other one is called corporate warfare, or pretty much, on the same type of concept. The idea that at the top of the party, we have some exceptions sometimes at state or local level, sometimes, I said, but then at the end, when it comes down to the big game, the real elections, federal election, it's all manipulated. So I try the best to live and bear and try to put seeds, or at least what I believe that used to be the principles of freedom, individual responsibility, that also they try to always paint the Republican people, that they think that they say they are about freedom and self-responsibility and all this stuff, small government. Then you realize, unfortunately, just a bunch of hot hair. So
exactly. Luca, my competitors are spending millions of dollars on this race. Both the Republicans and the Democrats will each have spent over $15 million to push their guy into the governor's office. And it's funny because right now it's a lot closer than what people think, and that's why you're not hearing about the polls. Because they're shocked at the polls. Because how they are all starting to look is that all three of us, the Republican, the Democrat, and I, are all in the 20 percentages. And it is so tight that anybody can win this one. Anyone.
Let me give you a little
I
secret.
can win this.
Let me share a secret with you. I'm not registered libertarian, okay? Because I don't believe anymore in any party. Not because the Libertarian Party is bad, but by choice, I want to be completely independent. But even when I was a Republican, I always voted for governor for you. And I never voted.
I appreciate that.
And it's not
we
because
get a lot of crossover because I always get more votes than there are libertarians registered.
Let me tell you,
I think we all should be registered as independents and just make the politicians define themselves.
Exactly. And let me tell you this out. It's not because I wanted to, betray the party. No, because I really knew by facts that Brewer was a fraud, and she's a fraud.
Absolutely.
And I could never put my name on something. Even when at the beginning, years ago, the first elections, oh, she's a great lady, oh, give her a chance. So wait a second, look already what she's doing and what she's done. So my point is, I never been binded or controlled by the party, even when, of course, I was part of their pack. Now I feel so much better because I don't have anymore to have any type of emotional distress when I disagree with my fellow, or what used to be fellow party members, because I don't believe anymore in parties. It's about America. It's about the Bill of Rights, about the Constitution, about the best man or woman that pretty much fits these type of ideals. So
you keep your eye on the ball.
Exactly. So that's the bottom line. And I don't care what the polls say about you, and I'm not going to even endorse you because I have nobody. I'm just a regular guy. All I say at this point, guys, is better to vote for somebody that maybe has one chance only to make it, but at least you remember that you done everything you could, and you never had to regret that you had to choose between the less of the two evil, or the lesser of the two evil, because that's pretty much where we come down. This game is always come back to that. You have to pick the best of the bad, or the worst. No, it's time to stop. Anyway.
Exactly. And you know what? That's why I tell people they've got to be responsible voters. And the problem is people don't know how, and a lot of it is because of the government schooling. It teaches them that, first off, it teaches every student that you have to have an opinion about everything. In other words, get your nose in everybody else's business. And that you've got to fill in all the blanks.
Barry,
whenever somebody gives you something with a blank on it,
Barry,
you're supposed to fill it in.
Hold your thought.
Well, I'm here to tell you neither of those is true.
Barry, hold your thought.
Barry, a responsible voter.
Barry, stay there.
Yes?
Hold your thought. We're going to go to the second part of the second hour. Okay, we have a little commercial.
Okay.
You're listening. You're listening to Love, Guns, and Freedom with Luca-Zanna on Guerrilla Media Network. Here we are back, second part of the second hour with barry-hess running for Arizona governor office. And Barry, we were talking about something very important. Please, can you continue what your point was?
Sure, on responsible voting, and a lot of people don't know what it is. But here we are. We've got to understand political parties are only social clubs. Mm-hmm. That's all they are. And so if we are to think beyond our social clubs, and as Americans, don't be too much Republican that you can't be enough American, is the problem. Because America is such an ideal that we should all strive to be Americans. But it doesn't mean we're United Statesians. Mm-hmm. And so when we go into the voting booth, a responsible voter, an honest voter, is going to have the predisposition to write in. There's a little write-in line on every single race. You always get the option to write someone else or something else in. And I would suggest the predisposition should be to write in NOTA, N-O-T-A. Mm-hmm. It means none of the above. Mm-hmm. Now, as you go down your ballot, when you you see a race where you actually know someone and you actually support that person, you should, of course, don't write NOTA on that one. Fill that one in, and vote for them. And make sure you cross the arrow for NOTA, incidentally, on your ballots. Don't let anybody filch it. Let them know what you're thinking. And, of course, that would give you a true indicator of how much support these politicians really have. And I promise you, it would humble 99% of them to find out they don't have 50% support. They have 5% support.
It's true. It is true. I believe that.
And that way we can keep them in line and keep them humble, because these days they tend to think of themselves as elected royalty. That they somehow become something special because they get to be a public servant. And I'm not running to be anybody's savior. I'm running to be everybody's servant. I will hold to the dictates of the Constitution. And I think that's very, very important that a governor has that attitude, because the governor sets the tenor and the standards. I mean, for instance, if the police get out of line with all this craziness of putting so many people in jail and wrecking so many families by taking one out, someone out of the family because they smoked a joint, for crying out loud, depriving their kids of their father or their mother, and putting 80% of the time putting that family who's lost their breadwinner, who's now in jail, 80% of the time it puts them into welfare. And so the taxpayer has to pick up the bill, and it ends up, what people don't realize is when somebody busts Luca for smoking a joint and puts you away for 5 years, and you have all your litigation, it's all paid for, you're going to cost the taxpayers over $1 million.
But can I say something also? For me, it's very important because, I don't smoke anything. But
I know.
But let me tell you something. This is not, the point is, I go crazy, really crazy, when somebody in the peace and the quiet and in the safety of their own environment, okay, without endangering anybody else, pretty much has no more the right, the freedom to decide if they want to drink a glass of wine or maybe they want to smoke a plant. Because the moment that the government tells you you cannot do that, with the condition that we said that nobody's in danger because you are in the safety of your place, like I'm allowed now to open a beer and get drunk if I want to. This is for me the thing, something I don't sleep at night. To think now, just because I'm smoking a plant and I'm getting maybe stoned, high, happy, whatever, but in the safety and the peace and quiet of my home, I can be pretty much arrested, become a felon, and on top, all my property confiscated. If this is something that shouldn't make you freak out, I mean, this is for me something that I am so strongly in favor that forget about legalization with the medical marijuana. I think
exactly
there's not yet to be medical. I don't want a license. I don't want to have a license to drink a beer. I don't want a license because it must be healthy. I want to drink a beer because it's my right to enjoy life. And if somebody else appreciates maybe smoking a plant, is their right. And that's the question I want to ask you. At the end of the day, to all my fellows listeners that they believe that smoking a plant makes you evil, even when you don't pretty much create any type of danger to others, who owns your body? You or the government? That's the point.
That is the whole point. And people, because the libertarians, all got together, and the political party tries to stay with the philosophy to the greatest degree possible, and we called immediately for an end to the war on drugs. When it first started, we saw what was going on. And people should understand, because we're misportrayed, and incidentally, I'll give you some political statistics, that people affiliated or associated with an affiliation of those, they did a study to see who engaged in smoking pot. Now, only 11% of libertarians have ever even smoked pot. And we're the ones who called for the end to the war on drugs, which is the irony. Now, the Republicans were at 24%, and the Democrats were at 38%. So it's funny that we would be the ones to stand up and say, you own your own body. We are not pro-drug. We are anti-prohibition. No one has the right to tell you what you can do to or put into your body. Now, by the same token, you are 100% responsible for what your body does at all times. And I mention this to a lot of the college kids. They get it. When I say you want to sit home and waste your life just sitting around getting stoned all day, trust me, I could tell you 1,000 stories of people who've done that and amounted to nothing. But I can tell you about 1,000 stories of people who have smoked a joint, and the last 4 of them became president of the United States. So it has nothing to do with anything. And so I tell the college kids, if you want to sit home and get stoned all day, that's your business. From the political spectrum, it's none of my business. But if you put yourself out into the public thoroughfare that I am charged with the safety of people in, and you elevate the risk to others, I will become your worst nightmare. And the kids get it.
I understand,
the adults,
but you know,
they have a little hesitation.
I believe, Barry, that we have first of all, double problem. The average politician who supports the war on drugs, first of all, I believe that there is a big mafia and lobby called also private jails, that they need to get more customers as possible, because everybody get processed through the system is going to become a new customer, and they need customer. The state now almost must guarantees a certain amount of
they
customers.
They do have to guarantee no vacancy.
Look at Colorado. I mean, they got sued, by the private jails. So that's number one problem. Number two, of course, is morality, that I don't think it should be the business of the government to judge my lifestyle. This is my personal opinion. And also I believe that there is something that even darker side. Think about it, the federal government, They can pretty much, the United States, our tax dollar is being sealed in a border like North Korea and South Korea that not even a rat can go through, technically, unless they want to. But the southern border, pretty much, we have drug dealers, human trafficking, everything you can imagine, and it's open, like a highway, And you tell me that with all the technology, the resources that waste trillions of dollars that we've been giving around the world, we cannot stop, let's say, for example, our Arizona border, all these illegal drugs. I believe that there is a big mafia even there where
it's a money-making operation.
Exactly.
The whole thing. I mean, you can even look at like St. Louis, because it's been in the news lately. Do you realize before they started a lot of the confiscatory things like the RICO statutes, when they started playing them into the private sector, remember, it was only supposed to be for the mafia at the time, but okay. But they ran like 40, I think it was 40 SWAT team operations a year.
Wow.
And that was a big deal.
Now,
today, they run over 4,000.
Wow.
And here's what that means. That means overtime for the officers, higher fees for the unions. Let's keep these unions, because that's what's driving it. And they, more personnel, more equipment, bigger budgets. It's all overtime. That's what they want. They want to be able to pay some of these people more and more and more. And at the expense of going and beating up on I don't want to say you, because I don't want to insinuate that you have anything to do with drugs or anything. But somebody else, we'll call him Joe, they just want to go pick on Joe so they can pick the pockets of the rest of the people. And we don't need that. And that's why the Second Amendment is so vitally important. I spoke with a group of police officers who were protecting us at a speaking engagement last night, 5 or 6 of them. And we had a good talk about this, and I spoke and I said, do you realize that the original motto for the police force was to assist and serve, that instead of to protect and serve? And there's a vital difference, because the police force was set up to be the neighbor who was always home, who would come and help you protect your property. They would assist you in protecting your property or your life. Well, it's turned around, as we all know. It's turned around about 180 degrees. And I think that's what's so vital to understand, is the people are here to protect the police officers as often as the police officers are here to protect us. That is our responsibility as a duty, or as a citizen, is to keep our streets safe. And that's why I'm totally for open carry, all carry, concealed carry. You want to bring a bazooka downtown, I think you're an idiot, but you have that absolute right.
Okay, let's talk about bazooka, because, I had a candidate, probably it's Mike Weiser, a few months ago. That
I know Mike.
Mike, Mike, some things I believe, even when it comes down to the legalization, I don't like his philosophy because I don't like to be taxed for a plant. They can tax me next time on my...
Don't you love that when they say, oh, yeah, but we'll just tax it really high like they did in Colorado. And the problem in Colorado is the black market still exists.
Exactly.
Because it's so much less expensive.
But
look also, stupid taxes.
Look at the president that you created. Now, they can tax a plant. Next time they can tax my basil or they can tax my tomatoes. I mean, they can tax nature. This is insane, okay? But regardless, let's move to the Second Amendment topic. You know, there are some anti-rights when it comes down to the Second Amendment. They believe that, they try to paint us like, okay, why don't you have also a bazooka, or why don't you have also a nuke? I already given my answer when it comes down to logic, because it doesn't need to be even a genius. I mean, everybody understands that the Second Amendment is an individual right, and we have some little exception. I mean, a nuke is not something that comes down to an individual right. It's a mass destruction weapon, or weapon of mass destruction. But when it comes down to even a bazooka, okay, I believe that if the government has it, we're supposed to have it. When it comes down to something that I'm able to carry as an individual, and I could pretty much create a response as a defense of my liberty and my country and my property and my life to anything that could become towards me. Because at that point, a bazooka is not comparable to a weapon of mass destruction. It's still like a weapon that is a direct hit, like could be a big caliber rifle. Now, when we lost this, you know that in 1934, we had pretty much created the first real gun control. If you were a governor, what would you do to try to really restore the Second Amendment the way it was written?
Well, the way it's written is very, very clear. I would repudiate any and all laws that abrogate any kind of infringement upon our rights, and that includes registration.
Mm-hmm. By the way,
absolutely. I don't want the government knowing who has what.
It's
nobody's business.
You know that in Arizona a few years ago, because of also Mojave County and our little activism that we did here, was written a law that is completely illegal for the state of Arizona or any type of local municipality to register or create a database of any gun, because we already have that. Now, my point is, there is a point, of course, this governor cannot legislate, but of course you can create policy, and also you can support legislators to try to give them the directions what to do.
Would you also veto funding?
Exactly. Would you believe in the idea that to restore pretty much the unorganized militia that also is part of our Arizona Constitution? And I really believe if there was some sort, because unfortunately, you know very well, the National Guard now, it is pretty much under the federal control. I mean, since the World War II, since the Iraq War, Bush, I think, was created all these new different type of executive orders, and also through Congress, that National Guard now pretty much is under the control of the president. But it would be nice to start to restore the basic concept of unorganized militia, also organizing it in a way that we would have at least show that we are not completely defenseless, and the governor wouldn't be just a talking head, but also would have some muscle behind to start to enforce the 10th Amendment. What do you think about that?
Well, I don't think that we should try to organize the unorganized militia, and there's a reason that they put that word in there, is so that there was no head of it that could be controlled.
You're right.
It's sort of like how it should have been if, for instance, and it didn't happen, and I don't agree with it at all, but if Saddam Hussein, for instance, did something so horrible, bad, awful here on American soil to us as to incite the ire that any individual can go after them and seek their vengeance. Now, here's the thing. From Saddam's point of view, would you rather have 1 million irate Americans who were upset enough to throw money in or to organize efforts to get you? I mean, you were the target of 1 million different groups. Or would you rather be the target of, say, George Bush in this case? Just one who you could play with and you can manipulate and who can call a halt to anything. What would you rather deal with?
Exactly. No, I agree with you. I rather to have, the point is an organization, when something has no head, you cannot really kill it. That's the bottom line. Right. And I agree with you. At the same time, I also believe that, even just, maybe I didn't express myself right, not as organizing it, but at least encouraging it. Remember,
exactly. Let people know you have a full right, you have a responsibility.
A responsibility.
You should maintain a firearm
and be
adequate
proficient
ammunition and training.
Exactly, because that's the point. The last probably 30 years, 40 years, the propaganda at federal level, of course, also through the media, because of a plan, they pretty much destroyed the word militia. They gave it a bad name, something that used to be pretty much the foundation of this country. I mean, the real first army we had was the militia, the citizen militia. Not the real army was created later. So and now
that's why we won
exactly
against the redcoats and the Hessian soldiers who came over. Incidentally, about 40% of the Hessian soldiers, they were hired mercenaries. About 40% of them, when they got here and heard what the colonists were talking about, that freedom for the individual thing, because they had never thought thoughts like that before. But once they got here and got amongst the people, they actually joined the colonists.
Exactly.
And that made the British very, very angry, because almost half of the force they had hired to come over here and to kill all the colonists joined the colonists. Because they understood what it was all about. And this incredible nation, I mean, literally, it is so unique in all of human history. Not before and not since has anyone ever been formed on the basis that the people own the government, period. We tell it what to do.
Barry.
And that was the way it was supposed to go. It was between you and your God and your conscience. You told your state what to do. And the states then individually told the federal government what to do. That was how it was supposed to be. But how we've turned it out to be, these darn socialists got into the game, and you're right, they started bringing us together under one umbrella and saying, we own you, and they turned us against ourselves. It was such a brilliant thing. But it's also, evil, but brilliant. I mean, they got the job done because now the orders by perception come from El Presidente, and then work their way down to the states, and then down the state then tells the people what to do, and God and conscience are left completely out of the equation. That's wrong.
And also remember, the point is to be understanding that you have rights, you must be a person that anyway must have some sort of a logic and using your brain and also education. If a nation expects to be ignorant and free, it's never going to pretty much happen. That's why they created all these programs, among those also Common Core, but before that also the Department of Education has been pretty much a precursor.
Well, they took over education.
Exactly.
There's no provision in the federal government to educate people. And it wasn't because they didn't want education. Of course they wanted everybody. And without government involvement up until the mid-1960s, the federal government was not involved in education at all. And we were absolutely number one in the world, far and away, the most highly educated population in history.
Exactly.
We had 96% literacy. And that was that or 94%. And the little bit of 6%, that was the excuse the federal government used to get involved. But they didn't have a constitutional mandate, so people wonder how they did it. Well, it was politicians. And the politicians made a deal, and the deal usually, and in all states I believe it's the same, the feds came in and said, we will take care of all of the interstate highways for you so that you have good transportation, but we get to have a say in your education. And they're completely unrelated, of course, but that is the way they get in. Now, as governor, I'm going to refuse all federal aid, because I'm also going to refuse to allow them to directly tax the individuals.
Very good.
It is absolutely not only immoral, that's why as my center post, I want to eliminate the personal income and property tax.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, for the obvious reasons. There's a lack of morality.
Yes.
You don't own something if it can be taxed out from under you by someone else, and your earnings, that's your labor. Money is just a memorialization of the time and labor that you put into it to gain it. It's a piece of your life.
And also it's an illusion. This fact that we own property is a pure illusion, because at the end of the day, you are just a rental. I mean, you're renting it. And the moment that you stop paying the rent, I mean, property tax is gone. And the same thing they can do to you now, if you think about it. Now they're doing today to your home. Tomorrow they could do to your couch. Why? It's just another piece of property. It's just another extension of your home. Why don't you pay a property tax every year on your couch? Maybe next time they will do also on your shoes. After all, you're using the shoes. You're walking on the streets. They're publicly funded. So that's where this stops that. So I really believe...
It doesn't stop. There are over 1,200 taxes introduced that Americans have to pay since the inception, since 1913 alone.
Exactly. Question.
Over 1,200 different taxes. I mean, look at your cable bill or your phone bill. That's ridiculous. I'm proposing a whole completely new paradigm, and that is, to be honest, and the reason we've got to get rid of that income tax is because, very simply, it is theft. You and I can't get together and call ourselves government and then say we're going to go take 50% of Joe's earnings. That is theft. Any 3-year-old can tell you that if you take something that is not yours from someone who owns it without their permission, then it's theft. And theft is still theft, even by government, even if they come with a gun, and even
Barry,
if they say it's for the children.
And don't forget also, people maybe need to understand that this theft or legalized theft doesn't even go to really services. All it does, it goes to pay the interest on the debt to a central private bank called the Federal Reserve that pretty much was granted the power to print money out of thin air. So let's print our own money at that point. I mean, let's the government, American government, the U.S. Treasury do it. I have 30 more seconds. Please, whatever you want to say, remember your website, barry-hess. Go ahead. You got the floor.
Okay, yeah, this is Barry Hess. I'm the Libertarian candidate for governor, and I really think I have some better ideas for a better Arizona. I wish we had gotten into them, Luca, because there's plenty of good reasons that my competitors have given all of us not to vote for either of them. But I hope to offer something to look forward to being an American, to being Arizonan, something that would make you laugh and proud, because we'll do it right and we'll have prosperity. Golly, I wish we could have talked about bringing back businesses and stuff. And
we will do that. I will get you again, Barry. Thank you very much.
Thank you for...
Have you ever met someone on an online dating site and thought, wow, this guy is perfect for me, or she is simply amazing, only to find out they were hiding a deep, dark secret? They plan to vote for Hillary. FreedomLovers.us was created for singles who want to exchange ideas and a love for freedom. People who are looking for solutions to create and defend freedom in the real world, and at the same time getting that once-in-a-lifetime chance to find their true soulmate. Whether you are interested in meeting your soulmate, making new friends, networking, or hanging out with that like-minded liberty lover, visit FreedomLovers.us. It's the first free dating site and community. So patriots, don't waste your time with other dating sites. FreedomLovers.us is the place where like-minded singles really click.
Hi, this is luca-zanna. You're listening to Love, Guns, and Freedom. We are now in hour number 3. Today is a kind of a different show. Normally, during this hour, we talk about love and little bit of a break from all this news and information. But I had two very special guests today. You know, we heard before from Jim Mars in the first hour. Incredible information. This great reporter. And I could not just, pass on him. And also our number 2, we had a great guy, gubernatorial candidate, Barry-hess. That it's another great hour full of information about rights and also the Second Amendment. So now I don't want to put down the love part. We really need to live life now. I also believe, especially in these times of harshness and sometimes even just so terrible everything, you need a break. But today, I'm sorry, we have so many news that we must reevaluate, and I was not able to update you during the first 2 hours, and I need to address now. So we will put a little bit of a break on the love part today, and we will address news. First of all, very disturbing news, the Ebola situation. We've been talking about this the last month at least, and, things that are accelerating. Try to visualize like a rain, you're outside and rains, drops start to happen a little bit, and slowly, the drops get faster and more, and then you're gonna be all wet. There is so much of a bad pattern here that really is disturbing, because now we see that there are several cases, and the response of the CDC and the government is pretty much close to incompetent, but there is more than that, in my opinion. First of all, now we see that there is also the sheriff deputy who was pretty much forced to go into the house of the gentleman that unfortunately died, the black man from Liberia. That was the first case in Texas and in America also to have Ebola, died. And this officer, this deputy officer, sheriff officer, and now is sick and is having all the symptoms of Ebola. And there are many other cases. We heard about cases in Washington, D.C., under observation. We have cases in Hawaii, Kansas. The point is we don't know exactly how much is true and how much could be more. That's the bottom line. All we know that the borders are still open, and unfortunately we have a situation that we need to start to remember now. Did you know, for example, that the government now, it can pretty much force quarantine any one of us suspected of having any type of communicable disease without any proof that that person has maybe more than just a cold or maybe just a little flu. And they can pretty much force you into this holding pants along with the real sick people. I mean, think about it. There is an executive order, I want you to write it down, 13603 of the Mr. President, okay? Pretty much that gives the power to the president or at the head of any type of federal agency, okay, that can pretty much conscript person of outstanding experience and ability without compensation in both peacetime and times of national emergency. Pretty much means that you can work as a slave. The executive order entitled Revised List of Quarantinable Communicable Diseases amends Executive Order 13295 that was passed by Bush in April 2003, which also allows for the apprehension, detention, and conditional release of individuals to prevent the introduction, transmission, or spread of suspected communicable disease. So now, first of all, the government can pretty much, just because you have symptoms of flu or cold, put you in this sort of camps with real sick people, while of course our borders, they are completely open, while of course these airplanes coming from Africa and all these countries where pretty much there is a potential of this Ebola, they're not being embarked, there's not been stopped, so it's completely suicide. But if you have symptoms of a cold, anybody from pretty much the federal government could start to arrest you and detain you without any type of due process. Then the best part, and I've been sarcastic here, they can pretty much get your work for free, like a slave. They can conscript you. So if this is not disturbing, I think really I don't know what else could be. So this is something we must address. Now, regarding to the Ebola situation, people think, wash your hands, stuff like that. This is not a cold, guys. Ebola has been done in the lab, okay? And by the way, the U.S. government has the patent. Think about it. That's pretty scary. I'm all for America, but this is not America. What they're doing to us, the military-industrial complex, it is not America. So don't be afraid to denounce these bastards, because all these are biological weapons. Okay? This is the point. Now, what to do? First of all, Ebola, unfortunately, we have enough evidence that is airborne. I showed it to you last week or so, the case with the monkeys, 450 monkeys or so, they all killed, and they were pretty much being contagious by this air duct in the labs, okay? Now, this also, Ebola, it's an evolution. Since we have no idea exactly how we created it, and this is not just something coming out of a bat, having sex with a human, this is something much more. This is about a lab bioweapon, okay? Can be pretty much changed, and it's been going to be very hard to pretty much control. Now, Mr. Thomas Eric Duncan, the patient 0, died, okay? So that's very sad. Now, the situation how spreading. I'm no doctor. I'm not trying to give you any medical doctor, but there is an article that I really think you should read. I will post it also on lovegunsfreedom.com. It's from naturalnews.com, and it pretty much explains how Ebola spreads. It is very important, and you need to start also see what can you do to try to prepare yourself and defend yourself. For example, the mask, the N95. Typical mask you can also buy at different, Home Depot, things like that, are not enough to protect yourself from Ebola. The masks N95, they are pretty much designed to prevent the person who is wearing the mask from infecting others. Okay, but these masks are not designed to protect the wearer, you, from a contagion floating around the air. So that's for starter. For example, the 95 designation means that they are all 95% effective at blocking particles in the air. So this is not going to be the solution, but better having it than don't have it, okay? Now, there are, you want to still live in society. We try to do that, but we need to start to think really, we don't know what's going on. And think about it now when you start to realize that this is being out of control. Like in Spain now we had a case, and we have in more cases that they are under observation. And what if these people, they've been under observation, they've been found and will be found maybe sick? How many other people infected it? So I really believe and I really hope that we are not there, but my guts and more importantly, the evidence somehow show me that we're in a very different stage. Now, I don't want to say more because I think you should read this article. It's naturalnews.com. It's a lot of good information, but at the same time, pray. I really believe that's another part of the process. Stay away from places that, unless you have to. I mean, honestly, right now, I wouldn't go in the subway. I never really go anyway. I live in the middle of nowhere, but I wouldn't go to a theater. I know I'm sorry for the theaters, but it's a place to try right now. Let's see 1 second, because this is not something you're going to get a cold, you go back home, and you're going to be back in business in a week or so. This is also a horrible death. Now, let's change conversation. Second Amendment. Second Amendment news, very important. We have some leaked DOJ, Department of Justice memo, that states, outlaw and confiscate all guns. Okay, the National Rifle Association, that they're not really exactly friends of us, but let's put this news right now, has obtained a Department of Justice memo calling for national gun registration confiscation. It's a 9-page cursory summary on current gun control initiatives that pretty much was not officially released by the Obama administration. We have the PDF file that I will also upload on the site lovegunsfreedom.com, okay? And pretty much this is powerful because think about it. We have now on the open this son of a gun of Eric Holder that we know very well that has been his agenda all his life to demonize and criminalize all guns and pretty much disregard the Second Amendment. And now he pointed out that banning high-capacity ammunition clips would be ineffective due to the fact that there is a large number of them already in circulation, so they're sad about it. And also their goal is pretty much confiscate and outlaw all guns. This is enough, would be enough for people that have been try to say, oh, Obama doesn't want to take your guns. Oh, what you complain about? You still have your guns. Guess what? The only reason why we still have our guns, because we've been fighting back. We've been at least trying to expose and try to fight back, and even the useless Congress in that area is trying to do something, or at least try it. The point is, if Obama had the magic wand and it would be easy, at least easier, for him to confiscate all guns, so only the government and the criminals would have guns, all guns from law-abiding citizens, he would do it. Because that's what every tyrant has been doing in the last, not just 100 years, since ever. Maybe before we didn't have guns. But during the Romans' time, what happened? When Julius Caesar got to conquer Gauls, before he slaughtered them in the public games, what does he do? He get his swords. And so Stalin, and so Lenin, and so Hitler, and so the Muslim with the curse, and everything else. They first confiscate your weapons, and then they kill you, and they own you. So this is not indifference, my friends. And this is very important. This is very disturbing. To have one of the highest, position in our executive government, DOJ, the Department of Justice, Attorney General, pretty much admitting that he wants to pretty much confiscate all guns, and especially now, don't forget also with the Department of Veterans Affairs, because the DOJ memo arrived a few weeks prior to a letter sent out by the Department of Veterans Affairs that pretty much a determination of incompetency will prohibit you from purchasing, possessing, receiving, or transporting a firearm or ammunition. That pretty much was sent to military veterans that they have nothing really, no problem, no medical problem. Now they try to pretty much completely smash down U.S. veterans. The U.S. veterans are receiving letters from the government informing that they are disabled and not allowed to purchase or possess a firearm. If the veteran does decide to purchase a firearm, it will be fined, imprisoned, or both. So, why you think they're so concerned about American veterans? And don't get me wrong, if somebody has some serious problem, documented with some real testing, and is proven incompetent, of course, he should not even have a knife, forget about a gun. But we cannot just because without due process, anybody that you don't like, deny their Second Amendment. But the reason why is the government, in this case the administration, and not just this one, even Bush before, they were very afraid of returning veterans. Why? Because when you return from a fraud like the Iraq phony war or the Afghanistan, and you lost a limb, or you lost your friends, your brothers and sisters, and you see how many trillions we've been pretty much been stolen by corporations like Halliburton and Blackwater, and you were pretty much caught in this fraud of this phony war with enemies that have no face, who have no face, that we created, like Al-Qaeda, like now ISIS, funded by the CIA, and by people like McCain and Obama and the different parts of the administration of the military-industrial complex. Yes, you're going to have a big pain in the butt with these returning veterans, especially when you deny them the basic rights of healthcare that they fought for, or at least they're supposed to have in their contract. You treat them less than illegals. So yeah, I really bet you should have kind of concern. And don't forget, when you have 20 million of U.S. veterans, that they start to be awakened, and they wake up and they understand what we are facing as a country, I really believe that at this point, we have hope. But that's why they want to kill this hope. They want to destroy the Second Amendment rights in the veterans. Now, some exciting news. There is something that I believe gives us always hope. They want to control our guns. They want to register our guns. Guess what? There is a guy, a young man, I think anyway, it's a company, but behind is a guy. His last name is Wilson. I think he has something to do with, Wilson from 1911. It's a famous shooter, especially during the 80s and 90s. Anyway, the company, it's called Ghost Gunner, okay? And I find it very interesting because I think is something that we should look into this, because now finally anybody can pretty much purchase a 3D machine, printing machine, a three-dimensional, that pretty much designs from zero a receiver of a rifle, and it's very affordable. So Ghost Runner is a miniature machine designed to automatically manufacture publicly created designs with nearly zero user interaction. That's amazing. This is amazing. Why? People say, oh my gosh, now all the criminals, they're going to have this machine. First of all, criminals already have guns, have automatic guns and every type of guns they can afford. Don't worry about it. The point is, what happens when government start to confiscate or will start to pretty much outlaws guns to law-abiding citizens? This is going to give us hope that we'll still have somehow available weapons. Okay, and more important, I believe this is also the political answer to also these gun control people, freaks, that they don't understand that there is never going to be a way to stop guns. The only thing you're going to be able to stop is guns for law-abiding citizens, because a criminal is always going to be able to get. So it's interesting. You should go check it out. You go to ghostgunner.net, G-H-O-S-T, Gunner, Gunner.net. And this machine is very affordable. They're going to launch it in the next probably few days. It's about $1,200. But think about it. You can build the first rifle, you already got your money back. Okay? So it's very exciting. And anyway, so this is pretty much the story now. I would like to leave you with a little bit of music. But before we go into that, I would like to also remind you that this show is supported by your support. Mostly, I really like the idea that supporting my music, and you can pretty much help the show to be free. And don't forget also to support the radio stations, or radio station, in this case, K-Talks, 1340 AM. Give me the opportunity to be here and broadcast the show with you. I'm almost getting close to the 1 year mark, and I will do a better show about it next Sunday. But for me, it's been an honor. 1 year ago exactly was, I think, October the 20th, 2013, Mr. Hayes, asked me to be on the air. I almost thought it was a joke. I have my limitations, my English, my grammar. Sometimes I say, what the heck, really people want to listen to me, what I have to say. But I appreciate it. I appreciate your support. And you give me the opportunity to improve, to get better, to also learn more. And that's why I think it's important for the show, because I think we have a chance to both learn. And sometimes, you may not agree with me, but at least I tell you something. You know where I stand. You know that I do not play politics. At least I have my own integrity. And even if you don't like what I say, let's say you're a funny lefty, you believe that Obama is God, and, that means, to be slave means freedom, government is your God. Okay, that's your belief. That's not mine. And that was even mine when it was Bush. So it's not just like I'm playing the Republican Democrat card. No, I believe in freedom, and that's it. So anyway, that's the story. Now, let's go with a little bit of music, and then we will talk the final part, since I really want to do a little bit of a recipe, because I think it's important that I don't want to give up the beautiful part, that we relax for a moment, and we try a little bit to enjoy life, okay? A little bit of recipe and maybe some music, okay? Stay tuned, don't go away. You're listening to Love, Guns, and Freedom with luca-zanna. Ciao.
Get us out of the United Nations. Get us out, we are a free nation. Get us out of the United Nations. Get us out, get us out. Stabbed our back. France, Russia, Germany, another UN's treachery. They're trying to ban our guns, so they'll control, they'll overrun our country, our freedom, our subjects, everyone. Get us out of the United Nations. Get us out, we are a free nation. Get us out of the United Nations. Get us out, get us out. Get us out of the United Nations. Get us out, we are a free nation. Get us out of the United Nations. Get us out, get us out. At the UN we are pissed. Do you remember Al-Hiss? UN's a bunch of commie spies, hidden eyes, a Trojan horse of our time. UN's freedom from the war means they're gonna rule the world. Remember Congo, Rwanda, Kosovo. UN hates God. Yeah! Get us out of the United Nations. Get us out, we are a free nation. Get us out of the United Nations. Get us out, get us out. Get us out of the United Nations. Get us out, we are a free nation.
is a songwriter, a poet, a rifleman,
I'm not afraid.
and a constitutional activist.
I'm not afraid.
Italian by birth,
I'm not afraid.
American by choice. Luca-Zanna
I'm not afraid.
and his new CD, Love, Guns, and Freedom. 16 powerful songs on one CD from the heart of a patriot. For download or to order the CD, go to www.lovegunsfreedom.com. That's www.lovegunsfreedom.com. Lyrics for your mind, music for your heart. Luca-Zanna's new CD, Love, Guns, and Freedom.
Have you ever met someone on an online dating site and thought, wow, this guy is perfect for me, or she is simply amazing, only to find out they were hiding a deep, dark secret? They plan to vote for Hillary. FreedomLovers.us was created for singles who want to exchange ideas and a love for freedom. People who are looking for solutions to create and defend freedom in the real world, and at the same time, getting that once-in-a-lifetime chance to find their true soulmate. Whether you are interested in meeting your soulmate, making new friends, networking, or hanging out with that like-minded liberty lover, visit FreedomLovers.us. It's the first free dating site and community. So patriots, don't waste your time with other dating sites. FreedomLovers.us is the place where like-minded singles really
Here we go, we are back, final hour, final part for Love, Guns, and Freedom with Luca-Zanna. Today we mixed up a little bit of cards. Normally hour number 3 is just about love and recipes. Today we had to put some news. Before we go ahead, and I'll talk a little bit about a very special, unique, and delicious recipe for today, and a couple of shout-out. I would like to pretty much read for you something very important. There is a magazine, gun magazine called Guns and Ammo that every year does some sort of, almost like competition, but it's not really. It's like they put all together all the different informations for all the different 50 states, and they select the best states for gun rights. And the best states for gun owners and gun rights for 2014, guess who is number 1? Again, Arizona. And it's very interesting because a different criteria, they go through that. And I believe that it's important to understand that guns and gun rights, it is part of being free. Okay? Because the point is government controls you. And the first thing they want to control, it's your gun rights, it's your rights itself. Now, just to give you an idea, what do you think is the worst state? Technically, it's not even a state. It's a district. 51, a position 51, the last one, Washington, D.C. Pretty much the strictest and the most terrible when it comes down to gun rights. There is no Second Amendment, pretty much. But the funny thing is, there's one of the highest crime rates for gun crimes. And more important, the absurdity and the hypocrisy you have of pretty much all the politicians who live there, they all have private security or secret services, and they have pretty much guns all over around them. So, they have the worst of the worst. Washington, D.C. State number 50, just to give you an idea, it is New York. And you could imagine that why. So, it's kind of interesting, I believe that it makes sense, and really, and you can see how it reflects also all your freedoms, not just in your guns, but also how the government wants to control your life. In New York, for example, there was a mayor, the former mayor Bloomberg, tells you if you can eat salt or not, tells you, for example, how big your soda can be. I mean, think about it. I mean, it's completely out of control. Then, of course, New Jersey, number 49. Then we have, guess what, 48, Massachusetts. Interesting, very terrible. One of the places where our founding fathers started pretty much freedom and the fight for freedom. Now it's one of the worst places. Then, of course, 47, leave it to Hawaii. Then we have California, 46, wow. And Connecticut, 45. Maryland, 44. Rhode Island. And, this is interesting. You should go there. I will put also the link on Love, Guns, and Freedom. And you can check pretty much all the different states what exactly are when it comes down to gun rights. For example, Washington State is 37. I'm not really excited. And the criteria that they are, for example, several voices. One is a right to carry. Then you have a Castle Doctrine. And then, of course, also the Class 3. Pretty much Class 3 NFA. That means that National Firearm Act, all the different type of machine guns, suppressors, all the different things that you need to have a special permit, federal permit, but in some state, they pretty much don't even let it happen. So it's interesting. It's very well done, I believe. And I'm so excited that, for example, Arizona is number 1, because you could be stuck. Don't think because it's just the Southwest you have gun rights. New Mexico, for example, is number 35. Nebraska, 34th. There is so much to go through. Seriously. And even Idaho, that people think, Idaho is kind of a free place, with people living in the bush and in the mountains. It is number 30. And this is very interesting. I'm telling you, let's say that the closest state after Arizona, even Nevada that will live next to us, it's only 22. Think how lucky we are to live in the state of Arizona. And I tell you something, guys. Sometimes it's time to regroup. And for people living especially in California or some other states that really I would have no even place to think to live there, New York, New Jersey, pack your stuff and move to Arizona. Simple as that. Land is still available. We have a lot of land. The market, unfortunately, is smashed, but it's good for you. If you need to buy, it's very affordable. You can buy acreage, and you can live still with some sort of resemblance of freedom. So that pretty much was it, and I wanted to share with you. And I thought it was be important. And just to let you know, guess who is the number 2 and number 3? Alaska is number 2, and Georgia, state of Georgia, number 3. Now, back to us. Since we are back into the recipes world, before I go with that, I would like to do a shout out. There is a lady that I met also on Facebook, nice lady, a friend of mine. Her name is Linda. Linda from Hawaii. And she has a special message for her niece. So, and the niece is the only one, so she knows who she is. She told me, just please say this to my niece. I love you, and I want to dedicate this song for you. So I have a song that Linda's dedicating to her niece, and it's a nice little song. It's a Western song, because this little niece, it's not really little, I think she's 16, lives in the middle of, I guess, New Mexico. So, some sort of a Western place.
Back to Calico, I will go. Another day on the road. Another day under the sun. You bring your dreams, I'll bring my gun. Back to Calico, I will go.
You are listening to Spaghetti Western Cooking Show with luca-zanna, the cook gunslinger from Rome, Italy. Discover delicious Italian recipes with the flavor of the Southwest. Learn romantic Italian phrases. Listen and dedicate heartbreaking Italian serenades. Meet great singles from around the world. Spaghetti Western Cooking Show. Okay, guys, that was first of all the song that I wrote and dedicated to the niece of Linda's niece. Okay. By the way, I also have a name now. I found it. Her name is Margherita. Or Margaret. Okay. So Margaret, you got your beautiful song dedicated for you and to you. Now, as you heard this little introduction of the Spaghetti Western Cooking Show, people are thinking, what's going on now? We're listening to Love, Guns, and Freedom. You're right. But also, I'm trying to really enjoy and having fun with you, because the final hour of this show, that normally I do recipes, give me the inspiration to create a complete, even different show that I will do at the beginning also for the internet only. It's called a Spaghetti Western Cooking Show, that I just talk about recipes and shout out and try to teach you some Italian words and some romantic words, some corny words, whatever. And of course, also a little bit of serenades. This is different. And I like to also enjoy the recipes that normally are Italian recipes, but with the twist and the flavor of the Southwest. Now, today I wanted just to share this idea with you, because also you can go to lovegunsfreedom.com, and I will put a link pretty soon so you can have a chance to listen to my show of Spaghetti Western Cooking Show just on the internet, just for you guys. Now, today I have a recipe that I wanted to share, okay? And let me tell you something. What I like about Italian food, that first of all, yes, there is the original traditional way to do it. But remember, it always depends which part of Italy, because everybody is a different variation. But also there is a way that you can create from an Italian foundation of a recipe. You can pretty much adapt it and create it sometimes also according to the ingredients you have. You know, I live here in Arizona. Sometimes I have access to all the Italian ingredients. Sometimes I don't. So I like to pretty much recreate myself. Now, what I do, and I really like it, I like to make my own recipes. And that's what is going to be pretty much the idea of the Spaghetti Western Cooking Show. Some real Italian recipes and some they are Italian recipes but with my flavor. Now, for example, today I have something that it's very simple. It's interesting and very delicious recipe. Okay, I call it pretty much linguine al pesto. Okay, because linguine and pesto is the basic Italian recipes, but I have a little bit of variation because sometimes there are some ingredients that are hard to find. For example, you know what is linguine? Linguine, it's like, almost looks like a fettuccine. You can also use spaghetti if you don't have linguine, but I taught you how to make, a couple of weeks ago, how to make pasta from scratch. Eggs pasta with flour and eggs, and that's exactly what you will need. So make some pasta and cut them as a linguine. They are pretty much thin, okay? Now, let's start with the basic ingredients. First of all, you need at least, let's say, 1 pound of pasta for 4 people. I'd say at least. Normally that goes for me. But anyway, then you need at least 3 cups of fresh basil. Okay, and it's easy to grow basil, especially if you have a little greenhouse. You can also grow it during the winter time, okay, if there is a little bit of heating. I grow normally also in my house. Then, you need at least 4 or 5 cloves of fresh garlic. Then you need, normally what you would need would be pine nuts. At least a couple of tablespoons of pine nuts. But that's the problem starts. You know, pine nuts sometimes are hard to find. And most of the pine nuts, you see, they come from China. Terrible. So my little variation is to use pecans, that you can find them pretty much everywhere. So you need at least a couple of tablespoons of pecans, okay? That's very easy. Sea salt, we'll see how much. Ground pepper. And then, normally you would need 1 cup of grated pecorino cheese. Sometimes pecorino cheese is hard to find. Guess what? Go with some Shepherd, very aged as much as you can, Shepherd cheese. Some sort of a cheese with a strong flavor, okay? Then you need at least 4 or 5 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil. Now, let's start. First of all, you start to boil the pasta, okay? Boil the water, as I taught you already many times, and, salt it, and at that point, you start to prepare the pasta. I mean, the pasta is already made, and you drop the pasta, you cook it al dente. Normally, I do this all at the same time, but if you want to do it before the sauce or this pesto, it's up to you. Normally, I do while I'm boiling the pasta, I also prepare the pesto. You need a grinder, okay? You can also do this by hand with a mortar, but a grinder is much easier. What you do, first of all, you wash the basil and cut it in pieces and put it in the grinder. And then you get the garlic cloves, drop it in the blender, in the grinder blender, okay? Electric blender, that's exactly what it is. And then when you have pretty much the garlic and the basil in the blender, you add the oil. We say about 4 or 5 tablespoons. Very simple. Now, you will see that the blender starts to blend everything, but sometimes may be a little dry. What I do, I get a little trick. You get a couple spoons of water from your boiling water, and you add it to the blender. But you want to be sure that the blending process continues. It doesn't get dry. You don't want to keep adding oil, otherwise it gets too heavy. So add a couple of water from the boiling. And it's very important because it's not just regular water, it's water from pretty much all the residual of the pasta, and it's really good. It's rich and there's also flavor. So meanwhile, you blend it, you add a little bit of sea salt, I would say at least a teaspoon, and you add another crunch of ground pepper, and at the end you also add the grated cup of cheese, okay? In this case, we say pecorino, or you could use, of course, shepherd cheese. Now, simple as that. When the pasta is cooked, you put it in a bowl, and you toss this beautiful fresh pesto on top. Oh, don't forget the pine nuts that we substituted with the pecans. So, you get all these ingredients, you put it in the blender, and at the end, you have a fresh homemade pesto. And that's really, really good, healthy, you know what you're eating, and you're really having fun. Okay, and no matter where you are, even if you're in the middle of Arizona like I am, away from Italy, you can have very authentic pesto, maybe with little variations, okay? And you can make your own pasta. I taught you how to do it. Now, little bit of love. I remind you that we have an opportunity. You have an opportunity for free to meet people from around the world, not just from around America, but also from around the world. It's called freedomlovers.us. It's a website that I started it, and it's free. Every one of us, every one of you, even if you are already committed to a relationship, you have already a wife or girlfriend, doesn't matter, boyfriend, you can find friends. You can find like-minded friends. That's the idea, finding each other, networking, creating a community. So I really invite you to go to freedomlovers.us, create an account, it's free, upload your photos, you can upload videos, you can meet like-minded people, and we may all have our differences, or doesn't matter, but the point, everybody that normally comes to freedomlovers.us, believe in one thing, that we all have rights, individual rights, no government can take away from us. We all should respect each other. And I have rights until I infringe on somebody else's rights. That's pretty much the idea. So please go there, and we will start to address. I have singles that pretty much contact me that I will normally go. This week was kind of hectic with the different type of guests we had, but next week I will have a couple of guests from freedomlovers.us. So, my dear friends, I really appreciate your help, and I really pray that we're going to face next week maybe some better news when it comes down to the state of affairs with America, Ebola, our rights. Unfortunately, I believe we're going to see the worst before we're going to get better. But at that point, let's not forget Horace, this ancient Roman philosopher. He wrote a line in his different books that he wrote, Carpe diem, enjoy your day. Because sometimes you never know what's going to bring tomorrow. I agree with that. We must enjoy our day, especially in these times, but also say carpe diem, enjoy your day, but have a plan. Because at this point, you'll never know what's going to happen today, tomorrow. Meanwhile, you do the best of what you can of your life, enjoy it now, otherwise there is no sense even to keep fighting. But at the same time, have a plan, because unfortunately, it's not up to us to know when it's time to go. And if you believe that we are here for sometimes long time, longer time, we don't know. I think dignity and to have quality of life is very important. Okay. After all, I really believe we are stuck in hell. So I don't want to sound like negative at the end, but it's realistic. So enjoy your day, but have a plan for tomorrow. Okay. Thank you very much for listening. Love, Guns, and Freedom with luca-zanna. Don't forget to go to my website, lovegunsfreedom.com, and feel also free to email me if you have any contacts, any ideas. Send it to me. Ciao.